Last question, and it's a couple of multifactorial pieces. Structural strength versus strengthening the nervous system and its relationship to injury. Because eventually what we're coming down to is you're talking about long-term athletic development and sustainability. And you need to have both of those things, but how do you build those things in conjunction with each other? Which one do you build? Which one is lacking in most people, and where does somebody start?
Right. So if we look at, there's three lenses that I look at it through. One is the nervous system. So what's happening from a motor skill development standpoint. And so movement abilities are motor skills. So if we don't have good motor abilities, then we're not going to have good movement skill tasks. If I can't do a task specific or sport specific activity, it usually relates back to movement ability. Right. So how can you be a good lacrosse player if you can't run? Right. So it kind of starts there. So I look at that from that lens first. Then I look at, well, if I load that, what does it do to the central nervous system? Right? And so if I'm sloppy mechanically, which is one lens that I look at, and I don't have the cardiovascular and metabolic ability to be able to handle all those loads, biochemical or biometabolic, then that's another lens I have to look at. But then I have to look at, well, how do those all come together? And if I'm looking at it from the perspective of, well, if I only have my central nervous system hat on, well, is it the mechanics that are leading to poor motor control? Or if it's, I just don't have the energy to be able to sustain it, and that's affecting the nervous system, where do I start? And that's really the challenge, is trying to determine, well, is it mechanical? Is it the nervous system they just don't know where to put their foot in the ground, right? From a motor task standpoint. And then when I do load it, what is their capacity? Does the nervous system completely fatigue, and then that's what makes them look sloppy? And so really it comes down to, well, I have to give some leniency to something, so I have to test it or screen it or have some sort of observation of it.
Sure.
So I usually start from the first, and I start mechanically. I give them the benefit of the doubt that their nervous system can learn a new task, because I'm not really challenging them at a very high velocity that would have such a high nervous system demand.
Sure.
That, okay, well, we'll see what your ability is to be able to handle this particular drill. So in that sense, I'll start with joints and how they interact with gravity and the ground first, right? From there, I increase complexity. And if I increase complexity in the motor task demand, then that lets me know what their nervous system can kind of handle. Then I see what's their capacity after that.
Right.
And so if I kind of follow that format, whether it's, okay, first just stationary throwing, then it's, can I throw on the run? Can I throw at different angles? Am I still interacting? And can my arm throw from different positions if I need to? If I'm a handball player, I need to be able to throw from just about anywhere, right? But if I'm a baseball pitcher, I have a fairly strict motor skill and routine that I stick to when I'm throwing, right? Both have their advantages, and some have their massive challenges. To a pitcher, variability is the thing that they need the most,
right?
And just for health of tissue. And so then we start to layer these different tasks and complexities in terms of what their training load actually is. And so the more skilled they are, and the longer that they've been training, and let's say they're a professional, then their ability to be able to handle complex loads becomes greater and greater because they've had the experience to do so.
Sure.
And so that's really where we look at, I need to have a lens to look at it from a developmental standpoint. Where are they in their motor skills and movements? And then as they start to age and they get into more, let's call it more elite sport or activity, we need to know that, well, they should naturally be able to progress and move at higher velocities, right? And so for me, velocity, the speed at which we move at, is the highest predictor of efficiency, but it's also the highest predictor of injury.
Right.
So if I can't do something, that's me included, I try to continue to move as fast and still train for power even though I'm 42 years old, because I have to be able to demonstrate that for my clients.
Sure.
But I know I can't move at the same velocities that I once did, and if I do, 3 days I'm shot, right? Because I just don't have the capacity to handle it anymore.
Of course.
And so that's what we look for, I think, in designing our training programs, is give the highest level of attention to the central nervous system, and before we actually look at increasing load mechanically.
Right.
Because the load that you add mechanically will have an impact on the central nervous system. So if I do, for example, high velocity sprints over distances, right? So obviously the 100 meter and 200 meter are probably the most taxing sprint, right? If I do a lot of repetitive 100 meter sprints, these guys are going to be destroyed, right? Or these girls are going to be destroyed. But if I take them in the gym and I do a power clean with them, high CNS effect, but not near as much as sprinting.
Right.
So there has to be a scalable effect of how much of this stuff I do. So that's why I use submaximal loading, and that's why Viper Pro is great, is I can now still tax their movement system, but with a submaximal load and a very submaximal velocity. So that allows me to balance out that sport specific velocity I need to move at, and then balance it out so that they have a bit of a homeostasis, right?
So you see the Viper as kind of that bridge between the development of the movement skill and the specificity of skill, and being able to load it and make that bridge between the two.
100%, 100%. And that's what's so cool about it, is that I can take that tool, put it on end, do a shuffling tilting pattern, and use that tool as an external reference for how their foot needs to get in the ground. Right? And so now they're not thinking about their foot. They can drive their hand at the same time as they drive their foot, and they can get that recoil that they need to get off the ground.
Right. And it's fun.
And it's fun. It becomes one of those things that it's purposeful. And again, there it goes to being task specific, right? It's not lifting this weights for this many reps for this many sets, right?
So you'd say the secret to training is train the general movement skills, the universal set of movement skills first, and then as those get more well-defined, start loading them, speed, weight, and other forces and such, and frequency and amplitudes and all that type of thing, and then start working towards those specific skills that the individual needs for, say, their baseball career or their skating career or whatnot, and try to build the athlete that way, and try to make it fun all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that the trick behind it is trying to find out when is that athlete ready for that level of specificity and velocity. And because most kids don't have an off season now, at least, well, in Canada we had to. You couldn't play baseball in the winter, and you couldn't play hockey in the summer, right? Well, they can now.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, sure.
It shouldn't happen that way. And so when I talk to off seasons for a lot of kids, they'll go, "Oh yeah, I had like a week off at Christmas time."
Right.
It's not an off season. Off means you don't put a racket in your hand, right? But if I can develop that in that way, then we can introduce the appropriate loads at the appropriate times for their individual development, and not based on age group, which is like, your date of issue, right? Which is, you came out September 1983, that means you're ready to go play this. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And that's the fault of sport and administrators, is organizing things that way.
But you're asking everybody to start looking at things from the long-term sustainability of that athlete, and ultimately the long-term health and welfare of that athlete, growing past their sport even.
Yeah, well, because we're seeing some of the greatest athletes in the world are playing now beyond their 40s, which we never thought of that before. But it's because they're thinking about balancing everything out, right?
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, we'll put the links to John's stuff and the Viper Pro and everything down in the descriptions and such. Where is the best place they can get a hold of you and get information from you?
Yeah, they can email me at johnny@viper.com. So JOHNNY@VIPR.com. That's a great way just to email me. It's a little more personal response. You can follow me on Instagram, which is Authentic Health Coach. And it's probably 2 easy ways to get a hold of me.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, and look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Awesome. Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you.